Hello and welcome to Views on News. I'm Jawad Tehami. We've seen the entire world has entered the new year 2025 and there were fireworks display all around the globe. But there is one enclave in this particular world that has faced war and misery in the last 1 year. It has entered the new year 2025 with the same atrocities being perpetrated by Israeli regime and its occupation forces. According to Gaza's health ministry, 46,376 innocent people in Gaza have been killed owing to Israel's unabated brutality and relentless bombardment. Israel has also resorted to siege and starve tactics, also unabated, indiscriminate and disproportionate bombardment, targeting hospitals, displacement shelters, aid workers, journalists and so-called safe zones. The ceasefire talks haven't yielded any sort of result so far, despite so many efforts. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is the one who has been blamed scuttling the efforts for a comprehensive ceasefire in Gaza. This has also now been said by one of the veteran Israeli negotiators, Gershon Baskin. Let me quote him. Netanyahu is the sole decision maker, but the Prime Minister and his allies maneuvered the issue and politicized it for their own benefit. However, at the same time, he has expressed the confidence and hope that President Donald Trump is the only person in the world who could effectively pressure Benjamin Netanyahu to a ceasefire deal and stop the war. We'll also be taking the analysis as to what could this hope be. Could we see a different year 2025, especially after Donald Trump takes over power, becomes the President of the United States of America on 20th of January? Would there be any sort of a respite for the innocent people in Gaza? We have also seen there have been a number of efforts in order to impress upon Israeli regime and its occupation forces, including the International Court of Justice's orders to Israel of preventing the genocidal acts. We've also seen international criminal courts arrest warrants against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. United Nations General Assembly overwhelmingly passing resolutions for a comprehensive, immediate and unconditional ceasefire in Gaza. There has been international condemnation, protests and also pressure, but Israel hasn't stopped from its brutality against the people in Gaza on the pretext of chasing the Palestinian resistance group Hamas. It all happened because the US under Biden administration has been unequivocally, relentlessly giving unconditional support to Israeli regime in terms of aid as well as vetoes at the United Nations Security Council. Now, the United Nations Human Rights Office has reported in a report. This report is of 23 pages. Let me quote one excerpt, that Gaza's hospitals are on the brink of a total collapse. The one sanctuary where the Palestinians should have felt safe, in fact, became a death trap. Unquote. Let me quickly bring in our esteemed panel of guests to talk about this particular pressing issue. For that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Ismail Younis, Palestinian journalist. Mr. Younis, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to have been joined by Dr. Amna Mahmood, foreign affairs expert. Dr. Amna, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. On Skype at the same time, we are honored to have been joined by Mr. Osama Nazzal, Palestinian affairs analyst. Mr. Nazzal, thank you very much for your time also, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Nazzal, if both of you participants allow me to begin the discussion with Mr. Nazzal. Mr. Nazzal, the year 2024, this is the second consecutive entry into a new year. Back in 2024, when it was the entire world celebrating a new year with all the fireworks display all across the globe, the Palestinians were suffering upon the entry into 2024. They are still suffering upon their entry into 2025. How this particular year of 2024 had been, especially, and what's the situation on the ground for them?
Yeah, it was really one of the worst years in the modern history as what the Palestinians have been subjected to was never experienced by any nation in modern history, or even during the First World War and the Second World War, as Israel used all types of weapons, killing all of the citizens, whether women, children, men, without any discrimination between a fighter and a medical doctor, between a fighter and a farmer, between a fighter and a teacher, between a fighter and a student. And the kinds of weapons that Israel used were internationally banned by the international law, as we all watched how the bodies of the Palestinian citizens in Gaza were set on fire and how they were burned alive. The images that we saw in Gaza during the previous year really were out of the framework of humanity. And if you talk about the scenes in Gaza and the crimes that Israel commits every day, without filming these crimes, the people won't believe you, because never expected to see such crimes committed by human beings. What the people of Gaza are going through, and now in this new year, is still unimaginable, as Israel continues to set the sheltering tents on fire, to leave no building in any part of Gaza, whether in the north or in the south. The people are drowning because of the rainy floods. So Israel ended any feature of a human life in Gaza. And despite all that it did, it is still determined to press ahead with its crimes, to leave no outlet for any Palestinian citizen to live in Gaza. So I think it is difficult for me, or even for a novelist or a storyteller, to tell or to write about the horrendous scenes and images that the people in Gaza are going through every minute and every hour, every day, for the 15th months.
Right, Mr. Nazzal, please stay with us. Mr. Younis, why the international pressure, the condemnation, the censure? We've also seen the case brought in at the International Court of Justice. It also gave orders to Israel to do everything possible to prevent the acts of genocide. Then arrest warrants on the part of the ICC issued against Benjamin Netanyahu. International pressure, the protests also in the Western world. Why Israel has been so much emboldened to continue with its offensive in Gaza?
There are two things. One of the main thing we should remember always, that Benjamin Netanyahu in the beginning of this war have mentioned that this is a war in which either we or them, means either the people of Gaza or the Israeli government. And he's working and he's fighting and he is still on the same path that he has launched in the beginning. The other thing is this. Action is not being taken that much seriously from anyone, neither the international law, and still the support from the international law, from the European countries, from America is still continuous toward Israel, and Israel has nothing to stop her. Actually, practically there are nothing to stop her. Israel have gone from killing, bombarding, to making people starve to death, and making people even stay in pain till death, even by bombarding and destroying the hospital. There are no way out. There are no safe zones. The safe zones that the international law, the United Nations have given for the Palestinian are targeted from the Israelis. So what else? After all what we are seeing in Gaza, till now, the Israeli regime is continuing the same as it started from 7th of October till today. So what will actually force Israel, when Americans have used the veto to support Israel, when Americans still supplying Israel by the weapons to continue their genocide? Israel and the Israeli regime and Benjamin Netanyahu is having a strategy. And this strategy is continuous since the beginning of this war. He have announced this strategy. No it is a war of what we can call it, a war to either we will be there or the Hamas or the people of Gaza will be there. So it's a war of existence actually. Either they will exist or we will exist. So that accordingly he is going through this line and no one to stop him, and he is getting support. So why to stop?
Okay, Dr. Amna, as per your understanding, there has been a lot of effort regarding as to reaching a ceasefire. There's been mediation, especially by countries like Egypt and Qatar. There's been shuttle diplomacy on the part of the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, making a lot of visits to the Middle East, having negotiations with the top officials from Israeli side as well as the mediating sides as well. Why do you think these talks haven't yielded any sort of a positive result so far?
Thank you, Jawad. I think that as you mentioned that for the long, all these forces are working on that, but very unfortunate that Qatar is also US ally, Egypt is also US ally, and Mr. Blinken, he is having a number of visits to the region, but that is not to help out Gazans, but it is to help out Israel, and it is to deter all the forces of the region, all the countries of the region, not to attack on Israel, not to go against Israel. He is there to get the support in favor of the action of Israel that they have taken it in self-defense.
What about this particular statement by this veteran Israeli negotiator who has very categorically said that it is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu who has been scuttling the efforts for a comprehensive ceasefire there in Gaza, and he and his allies have maneuvered this particular issue for their own benefit. And this is the accusation which has been coming from within Israeli ranks as well. We've seen the protests going on within Israel also for the release of those hostages, and they are also largely of the view that it is because of the personal and the political gains for Benjamin Netanyahu himself that he is being the one who is scuttling the efforts for this ceasefire.
It is obvious that he has his political interest. If the war would be over, he would be tried for a war crime. One side, from within the country, he will lose the elections because elections are scheduled, and then on the other side, he has been declared as the culprit of all these genocide he has been committed here and that is the verdict of the International Court. But you have seen all the Western governments' behavior and the US behavior, that he is actually barred from traveling to any of the country who is the signatory of UN Charter and who is the part of UN International Court. But still he is traveling. As Younis mentioned, that they say that this is the war between us and Gazans. But here I would say this is the war between the whole Western world and unarmed civilian Gazans. This is the war, because Israel has no capacity to fight with such determined and such committed civilian population. They are being all the tools are used which are anti-human: food, shelter, water, and then medicines. All these are denied to Gazans. The whole world is silent. It means that Israel is not alone. The whole Western world is with Israel in apartheid designs of Israel against civilians.
Right, Mr. Nazzal, now there's been a development in the recent past, just a couple of weeks before. In that particular time span, we saw some sort of positive statements coming from all the sides, even including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu telling his parliament, the Knesset, that a ceasefire deal might soon be reached. There was also a statement on the part of the Hamas officials. They had said that the mediators had narrowed gaps on most of the agreement clauses, but it was again Israel coming up with new conditions every time that have actually halted the progress in reaching of that comprehensive ceasefire for Gaza. Now, by looking at this particular statement by Gershon Baskin, that this particular ceasefire deal, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been the one who has been scuttling the efforts for this ceasefire for his political self-interest. What's your understanding? What had been the stumbling block in these particular ceasefire talks?
The Israeli occupation government of course, represented by the war Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has never been serious about ceasefire or about reaching any form of compromise or any form of settlement with the Palestinian people with regard to the war on Gaza or with regard to the conflict as a whole and the end of the occupation of all of the Palestinian territories. Netanyahu and his government have set a plan even before the 7th of October, which is to kill any opportunity for the Palestinian state and for the Palestinian independence. And he used now the 7th of October as a pretext in order to implement the plan that they have already designated in Israel, which is expelling as many Palestinians as possible, whether from the Gaza Strip or from the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem, in order to overcome the demographic problem that Israel always talks about. They don't want to see Palestinians in Palestine, but by minimum. And so Netanyahu is continuing the war, and he is deceiving all the mediators and all the negotiators towards the plan that he set, which is minimizing, if not expelling all the people from Gaza, minimizing the number of the people of Gaza, mainly in the northern part, which is left without any schools, without any hospitals, without any constituents for a human life. The north of Gaza today is a wasteland. No human being can live there. So that is the plan that Netanyahu has, and he is not going to quit until he makes sure that it can be implemented. How? By continuing the war. And why should he stop?
Mr. Nazzal, when you speak of his strategy of having no Palestinians in Palestine or having the bare minimum Palestinians in that particular territory, so far the death toll by the Gaza's health ministry tells us that it is 46,376 people who have perished because of this brutality on the part of Israeli regime and its occupation forces. And when we talk about the overall population in the Gaza enclave, it is around 2.3 million. Are you suggesting that Benjamin Netanyahu, when he strategizes of not having Palestinians in the Palestinian territories, is to go against all those 2.3 million Palestinian people? And is it possible for anybody to exterminate or completely eliminate such a huge chunk of population?
Yeah, that is the plan of the Israeli occupation government since day one of the war. But this plan was not implemented until now because of the Egyptian position by closing the borders and making it clear that Egypt is not going to take in any Palestinian from Gaza. So Netanyahu amended that plan and decided to minimize the number of the Palestinians in the north of Gaza. And that's why we see today how about 2 million Palestinians of the 2.2 million people are crammed into small areas in the south of Gaza. The north of Gaza is almost empty of the people because Israel did not allow any of the citizens to stay there by burning the sheltering schools, the schools of the United Nations, and by destroying all the hospitals. And you must have watched the scene of Kamal Udwan Hospital and how the director, Hussam Abu Safiye, was abducted by the Israeli tanks, and the medical doctors, nurses were either killed, injured, or detained. So this is the plan that he has. If not taking out all of the Palestinians from Gaza, at least taking out the people from the north and maybe building colonial settlements in the northern part of Gaza or military outposts. Especially today we see how many military camps and how military outposts are built there.
Right, Mr. Nazzal, when you talk of health facilities in particular, now this particular UN Human Rights Office report talks of let me quote one excerpt, that the deliberate destruction of healthcare facilities may amount to a form of collective punishment, which would also constitute a war crime. Now, it is also called for an independent investigation into attacking these health facilities. At the same time, what's your understanding? Is there any sort of a hope that there could be a possibly an independent, impartial investigation into attacks on these health facilities, which has been urged by the UN in this particular report?
Look, Israel committed all types of atrocities and all types of genocidal and ethnic cleansing against the Palestinian people. Israel killed and injured over 200,000 Palestinians until now in Gaza. Yes, you mentioned the number, about 46,000 dead, but there are more than 12,000 others are still under the rubble. And thousands of the injured are in a very critical condition. So we are talking in total about 200,000 Palestinians either killed or they can't exercise their normal life anymore. And we did not see anything from the United Nations or any international body, but hollow statements and hollow words. You know that Israel used the artificial intelligence tools like the lavender, the hunter and the flow, and other terms that we have never heard of before in order to kill as many Palestinians as possible, not depending only on its soldiers, but also on the artificial intelligence and other technological tools to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians. And we did not see any move from the so-called international community. So, my dear, all the reports and the statements that are issued by the United Nations or any international body just for public consumption, but when it comes to interpretation on the ground and implementation of these statements and reports, we see nothing. What we see, the Palestinian children are murdered. The Palestinian people are drowning in the floods of water in Gaza today. The Palestinian people in the sheltering schools are put on fire and they are burned alive.
Right. Mr. Nazzal, as you have to leave earlier, one last question from you, then I'll proceed towards the other participants. Gershon Baskin, a veteran Israeli negotiator, has talked. I have already quoted one part of what he had to say regarding Benjamin Netanyahu's personal self-interest in maneuvering this particular issue for not reaching a comprehensive ceasefire deal in Gaza. He is also of the view that in a short time to come from now, especially after US President-elect Donald Trump takes over White House, he's the only person in the world who is going to effectively pressure Benjamin Netanyahu to stop this war, and he's going to exactly tell him that it is the time to make a deal. Do you think this hope that has been expressed by Gershon Baskin holds water? And how hopeful do you think the situation could be different once Donald Trump takes over?
Sorry to say that I'm very much pessimistic and I don't have any hope in the next American administration because we have tested the administration of Donald Trump before when he announced the deal of the century, announcing that all of Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel. So any deal in the future is not going to be in favor of the Palestinian people or in favor of the national rights of the Palestinian people. It's all going to be for the benefit of the Israeli occupation and in consistency with the plan of the Israeli occupation government. Yes, it is very important now to stop the Israeli genocide. That is the first step that all the Palestinians are calling for. And the other steps, the political solution, the how the area is, what shape, what political and geographic shape the area is going to take, this can be negotiated later. But here we believe in Palestine that Donald Trump is not going to exercise any pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu. And if he decides to stop the Israeli genocide, he wants first to make sure that the goals and the wishes of Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli occupation are realized.
Right, Mr. Osama Nazzal, Palestinian affairs expert, joining us on Skype. Thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Younis, now by looking at this particular report, when the UN Human Rights Office talks of Israeli regime and occupation forces targeting hospitals in particular, there's been a pretext on the part of the Israeli officials that the Hamas fighters had been taking refuge over there, or they've been using those facilities for the military purposes. This UN report talks, let me quote, insufficient information has so far been made publicly available to substantiate these allegations, which I have already referred to, which have remained vague and broad, and in some cases appear contradicted by publicly available information. Your understanding?
The point is this, that we are still talking as Israelis, as a government that's not occupying Palestinians. Palestine all is an occupied state, and that's internationally known thing, and UN knows this, and accordingly the Palestinians are fighting in this way. The international, and we all, actually everyone has to understand that we are under occupation. Palestinians are under occupation. So the negotiation with the occupier is not that way. We are actually the Palestinians, whoever, Hamas or any other group, they are fighting for their rights. They are not just a militants or fighter, they are fighting for their land. The point is that whatever it takes to take hostages or whatever, the negotiation is to stop the occupier actually in the beginning, and the other point, that the occupier has to stop the genocide. The genocide didn't start from the 7th of October, by the way. There were killings and there were tightening on the Palestinians in Gaza and in West Bank since years. Where Palestine is occupied since 1948. Fine, and now the negotiation is occurring for what? For few hostages that Hamas or other groups have taken. And what about the thousands of the Palestinians who are inside the Israeli jails? Why no one is talking in this regard? Brother, the point is this. Israel is taking stepwise to expand the land. Okay, they have found, as Mr. Nazzal have said, they have found an excuse to expand their land, to expand their empire, or whatever you can call it. But it can't happen. Now they are going, fighting, killing, after killing, now they are going for starving, now they are bombarding the safe zone, they are bombarding the hospitals. They want to reach the Palestinians to that state, that to survive, to suffer, and ask the Israelis either to give us a way out or kill us. And it has been heard, by the way. You can kill us till the end, we will stay there. The point is this, as Che Guevara have said, those who fights for starving, they will shut up when they eat. But those who fights for their lands, they will not shut up till they get their land back. That's the point. Israel and the UN, it's not the first statement from the UN, by the way. It's not the first statement from the International Committee. It's not the first statement from the Israeli government that Benjamin Netanyahu is doing for his interests or not. They have been saying this since the beginning. Did it make any difference? No. The supply is continuing. The support is continuous. As Dr. Amna have mentioned, those people just want to cover themselves and to show the international law that we are actually okay. We are a government. We are not a group of mafia that controlling the area. Fine. That's just for the international to give it a record that the government, this is a legal government going on. But what they are doing actually is doing this. That it's a mafia. Simply.
So what's the way forward? What about the alleviation of the suffering of the innocent people in Gaza, especially after 7th of October? You've also mentioned that this genocide didn't even start from 7th of October. It has been going on since long time, decade after decade. But what about that suffering? When that suffering is going to be alleviated?
Till the international law, till the Muslim countries make and force Israel to stop this war, and make Israel to stop the occupation of Palestine. This is the only way out.
Right, Dr. Amna Mahmood. Now, this particular, is there any sort of a justification for any, whether it be any defense force, in this case the occupation forces of Israel, to target the hospitals in particular? Because as per the international law, they can't be targeted by any of the sides. And in this particular report, the UN says that there hasn't been any substantiated evidence regarding as to the allegations on the part of the Israeli regime that these facilities were being used for military purposes.
Initially, if you can say that they have been used or not, but now the whole Gaza is a rubble and there is no place to hide. You have seen the camps people are living in, and at least 7 children died yesterday with this extreme cold. And what about what to talk about the newborns and so, and they just evacuated all the staff and they put the hospital on fire. There is absolutely no justification. You see that the statements you were quoting is by the whole the UN Secretary General is making requests to the whole community, but at the same time you see the attitude of UN Security Council that was bound to stop this or any dispute in the world. In fact, UN Security Council has lost its justification to be, because it was established on 2 goals. One, they would reduce the probability of war, and second, when there would be war, they would reduce the disaster within limited time to end up to come to the solution. They have lost that, and it is the hostage in the hands of P5. Rather, not only they are the hostage in the hands of United States. And by the way, your question that Mr. Trump would make a difference.
I'll come to that particular question,
yeah, okay.
But I just want you to shed light on this particular
Absolutely,
thing. Do you expect any sort of investigation happening into attacking of these hospitals? Because this particular UN report also talks about this, but it also talks about the limitation of the Israeli justice system in addressing the actions of its armed forces.
You have seen the Israeli justice system, as Younis mentioned, that there are hundreds, not hundreds, but thousands of Palestinians living in their jails, and that stopped from the 4-year child to a 72 years, 80 years old person as well. And they were sentenced on the account that they were terrorists, they were attacking Israeli civilians. You see that, and it is just the reason just to evacuate the land. Israel needs land only, not the people. People should be thrown to any ocean, they should leave.
Is that so easy? So for the death toll, there has been coming forth by the Gaza's health ministry, 46,000 plus people have perished because of that brutality.
Well, you tell me that
2
is
million
there any
people.
other
Is that possible for somebody, even Benjamin Netanyahu, with all the support he is getting from the Western world, especially the US, to go about all 2.2 million Palestinian people? I mean, is it going to be that?
You see that this is the first genocide that is being done live on cameras.
Exactly.
And nobody is having sympathy for the people, and Israelis are using human animals. Those who are even don't deserve to be called as human animals. They deserve to be called as beast. They are not even human animal, and they are calling unarmed civilians and unarmed children. You know, half of them who died are the children, but nobody is stopping them. There is no other option for
Do you think
Palestinian.
Benjamin Netanyahu is more frustrated now because he has been unable to achieve what he actually said at the outset, chasing the Palestinian resistance group Hamas, but this particular resistance has been going on since 7th of October, and he has been completely failed to go about after Hamas?
I don't think that Mr. Netanyahu is
keeping in the equation in view the asymmetry of this particular war. Do you think there has been major successes on the part
under the international law? This is not the war, as my co-panelist he mentioned that it cannot be war. War is between two equal partners, equal parties. They are having some compatibility, but they are not having even a single thing to resist. They are not even able to survive. They are having no food, no shelter, no land, and no even hospital. So I don't think that this is a war, and Mr. Netanyahu is not frustrated. Everything is going under his plan, and you see that they have opened number of other battlegrounds, and they have captured a lot of area of Lebanon. They are just 30 miles away from Damascus right now, and at the same time they are killing 50 Palestinians daily. And the whole world is not taking anything about Gazans now. They are more concerned about that what is happening in Syria, and they are all US allies are also partner in that war. 5 of the
so what I understand from your take is that
he is achieving all his goals, what he said at the outset.
I think he is achieving his goal, and it is by design that he will expand its area of influence physically, and he will be going to achieve the goals of greater Israel.
What about those voices which are coming
resistance.
from within the ranks of Israeli? This Israeli veteran negotiator, Gershon Baskin.
Few voices.
There are a
Few
number of
voices.
other voices also. There are protests which are going on within Israel
Those
as for the
protests,
release of the...
Jawad, those
And they also
those
consider
protests
that
are-
Israeli Prime Minister is the one who has been scuttling the efforts for a ceasefire because they want
if
their
that
captives
is
to be
really the
released.
case, there can be a vote of no confidence in Israeli parliament, but there is no move yet. And you see that the whole plan is that they would continue to rebel. And
What
and
about
the
those cases
demonstrations-
that he's standing
demonstration
trial
in
in?
Israel are in favor of the hostages captured. They are not in favor of that why you are committing this genocide.
Right.
Right?
Mr. Younis, by looking at this equation of the offensive, the goals and the objectives which were set by Benjamin Netanyahu at the outset, chasing and eliminating the Palestinian resistance group Hamas, has he achieved those, or he's been unable to achieve those objectives and goals? That's why he is on a killing spree. Doesn't that naturally show that he's more frustrated at this point in time, especially standing trial in those corruption charges at home as well?
First of all, we cannot call him, sorry ma'am, we cannot call him as Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah.
We will be calling him the criminal Benjamin
Yes,
Netanyahu.
yes.
Number one. Number two, definitely he might be frustrated because till today the Palestinian resistance is hitting back. And the new reports have said that there are around 10,000 Israeli soldiers, and I'm mentioning soldiers, were killed or injured. The point is this: the Palestinian resistance are fighting against the Israeli army. And I believe that all Israelis and even the civilian of Israel are a part of the armed force because it's an occupied land, and they are all are occupiers. Even those who are civilian who are living in the Palestinian, in our land. That's number one. Number two, being frustrated, that's one thing, and having an excuse, that's another thing, and having a win, a statement that he have killed Ismail Haniyeh out in Iran and he have killed Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon. That's let's say a escape plan for him that he have made, that those were an easy target for him, but yet the resistant parties, the resistant fighters in Palestine are punishing them back in Gaza. Till today the videos are being released. He is taking this excuse to continue his genocide, but on the other hand, everyone knows, even the international law knows, that those Palestinian resistance are on their land and they are fighting the occupiers. And the International Committee and the United Nations have mentioned Israel as an occupiers. So there is, as ma'am mentioned, that there is not an equal war. That's an occupier and those the occupied people. And the occupied people have the right to fight back, resist the occupiers. Yet those are not an army, and yet those are the highest and most advanced army on the world at the moment. So Benjamin Netanyahu is facing difficulty, but those voices inside Israel that you have mentioned, those voices, did they make any changes in his strategy? No. Did they cause any force? No. Did those hostages families made any force to stop them? No, until the international law, until the Muslim country takes a real step in that regard to stop this genocide, to punish Israel, to take a step and stop supporting them in a way or the other.
Right. Do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is going to enjoy or have the same favor or a support from the United States of America as he had under Biden administration when Donald Trump takes over?
There is a question that you have mentioned before regarding the way out of this war. The way out of this war, as we have mentioned, that Israel has to know that the support of the international committee has to stop in the way or the other. But the point is that Americans themselves, the regime of America before Biden or after Biden with Trump, the regime is continue. The regime is same. The support of Israel is the main thing in the American system, in the American strategy. So I don't think that there will be any difference. Donald Trump
during his election campaign talked about bringing peace to the Middle East.
He have mentioned that there will be a big disaster.
Later on, after becoming the president-elect, he said that if the captives are not released, then all hell is going to break out.
Exactly. So what
could be the manifestation of that?
He will keep on supporting Israel, that's number one. It might be the American forces comes themselves to the area. Why not? And they are having this excuse because the Israel as an army have failed so far to stop the fight back from the Palestinian resistance.
So what about this particular statement by Gershon Baskin, that President Trump is the only person in the world who can effectively apply pressure on Netanyahu, that he is going to tell that it is the time to make a deal and the war has to end? Do you expect the same thing happening?
Expecting to be in favor of Palestinians? That's not possible.
For at least not in the favor of Palestinians, but at least reaching a ceasefire and ending the war for now.
It's a war of existence, brother. As we have mentioned, Benjamin Netanyahu have mentioned this from the beginning of this war. It's a war of existence. This war cannot be stopped in this way until Israel should announce that they have lost the war. It is the only way out. The Israelis has to announce that they have stopped the war, even if they mention that we have stopped the war. If they mention that stopping the war is a lose, it means they have lost the war. There is no way out. So what they have achieved, killing innocent people? Did they finish Hamas? Actually, the point is not Hamas. The point now, everyone in Palestine now is a militant fighter. Every child is a militant fighter, now or in the future. So, and Hamas is not the only one is fighting Israel. That's an excuse actually, because fighting a terrorist group, as they call it, fine, is an excuse to continue the war. But did they only fight them? No, they have fought against the children. They have fought against the unarmed people for the whole 1.5 years so far. So the war actually, even if they cease the fire, in this particular time, even when Donald Trump comes, it's a loss for Israel.
So what about that public pressure? We've seen massive protests going on in the US, in various university campuses. Also during the election campaign, we saw where there was a huge chunk of Muslim and Arab voters. They were of the view that it's going to be Donald Trump perhaps who is going to bring in a little respite regarding the situation in Gaza, because if Kamala Harris is going to win, it's going to be the continuity of the policy of the Biden administration. What about that expectation among those Arab and Muslim voters within the United States of America, and those students and the people who were protesting in large numbers over there in the university campuses? Don't you think it's going to act an element of pressure when Donald Trump becomes the president?
Didn't these protests stopped? They are already stopped. So what pressure did it bring for the United States? Nothing so far. If they will do it again, Donald Trump have already threatened them. If it will happen, or if it happens in my tenure, that I will take them all back to their countries. So I don't believe that civilian can make any changes. Even the Muslim community in America can make any changes unless it goes to the big heads like the political leaders. Right. And regarding your particular question, can Israel finish the 2.5 million Palestinians? What can stop them? What is preventing them to do that? They are doing it, as I mentioned before, they are doing it in the way, first of all, bombarding. Number one, now making them starve, making them, as Dr. Amna have mentioned, die in cold. Die of starving. So what can stop them when they are getting the support?
Yeah, Dr. Amna, very quickly, your last comments regarding as to could there be a possibility of respite when Donald Trump takes over power, becomes the president of the United States of America, the 47th president of the United States of America, with that particular public pressure within home and that sentiment of the Arab and the Muslim voters over there?
I think that Trump's strategy would be different, as we have seen in the past President Clinton's strategy, that he signed Oslo Accord. He forced Palestinians to sign Oslo Accord, and he promised two-state solution, but that was another disaster to capture more land in West Bank as well, and reduce them to Gaza, 18-mile strip only. And Mr. Trump would force all the regional powers to come to sign Abraham Accord, and that there would be no talk of Palestinian again. I think that would be the strategy.
Dr. Amna Mahmood, Foreign Affairs expert, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Ismail Younis, Palestinian journalist, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.